German or Dutch, which is more difficult to learn? Well, first of all, German and Dutch, as you might know already, are quite similar languages. In fact, German and Dutch share well over 80% lexical similarity. This means that the vocabulary between German and Dutch really isn't that different from one another. This is because German and Dutch, just like English, are all three West Germanic languages. In the word West Germanic, you can even see the word German. So there you have it. For the record, I myself, I'm a native Dutch speaker. I live in Belgium, so I speak Belgian Dutch, or more specifically Flemish. I'm someone who really likes learning languages, which is why I'm making this video. What's intriguing about German and Dutch is the amount of false cognates that the two languages share with each other. Now, what's a false cognate for those who don't know? Well, false cognates between two languages. The spelling and the pronunciation might be very similar between the two, but the definition of the words in each language is actually completely different or slightly different. Look at this list of German words and look at this list of Dutch words. The words look very similar, don't they? Well, the definitions of the words in the German lists are actually all very different from the definitions in the list of the Dutch words. Let's go over the words one by one. So this word, it means moon in German, but it means mouth in Dutch. This word, it means red in German, but ratten in Dutch. This word, it means dead in German, but until in Dutch. And lastly, this word means to know in German, but it actually means to erase in Dutch. So even though it's quite easy for a German speaker to build a big list of Dutch vocabulary, there are definitely some words that can have very misleading meanings, so you'd have to watch out. To determine which of the two, German or Dutch, is actually more difficult to learn, I'm going to break it down into several elements. The first one being grammar. While it is true that for both German and Dutch, the grammar can be quite tricky, as a native Dutch speaker, I can definitely say with confidence that German grammar, it's basically Dutch grammar but on steroids. The best example that I can give is the difference in amount of articles. So in Dutch, you only have 3 articles. You have one indefinite article and 2 definite ones. So in Dutch, you have een, which means a or aan, and then you have de and het, both meaning the. De is used for masculine and feminine nouns, and het is for neuter nouns. Now, let's compare this to German. So, for the indefinite articles in German, you have ein, eine, einen, einem, einer, eines. Now let's go to the definite articles in German. Der, die, das, den, dem, des. You see, I think based on this you can say that it's probably objectively harder for a Dutch speaker to learn German articles than vice versa. There's a lot more where that came from. In German you also have more verb conjugations than in Dutch. You have noun declensions, which isn't even a concept in Dutch. but I could go on and on. Now, on to the spelling. Both German and Dutch are actually quite phonetic languages. Languages like English and French are really not that phonetic at all. I can definitely say that English is might be the least phonetic language in all of Europe. On the contrary, German and Dutch are actually really phonetic. Neither of them are 100% phonetic. That's really not the case. But still, if you compare it to English or French, learning spelling in German and Dutch, it's actually a complete breeze. But the question is, of course, which one of the two has less easy spelling? Well, in this case, it would have to be Dutch. I'm going to provide a few examples. So let's translate I run and we run in German and then in Dutch. So in German, it would be ich laufe and wir laufen. But now look at the Dutch version. Ik loop, wij lopen. You see the differences in the vowels? So in Dutch, if you say ik loop, I run, you have to write two O's. But if you say wij lopen, we run, one of the O's goes away and you only have one O left. Even so, the vowel pronunciation in the two verb conjugations are exactly the same. Let's look at another example to prove the point. So in English you would have one flag and two flags with an S on the end. The German version would be eine Flagge, zwei Flaggen. You just put an N at the end. Really not that much different in spelling, is there? But now let's look at Dutch again. Eén vlag, twee vlaggen. In the plural, you have to write two G's, whereas in the singular form, you only have to write one G. But the pronunciation in the G, it stays the same. Eén vlag, twee vlaggen. It doesn't change. So yeah, even so, Dutch spelling really can't be considered very hard by any means. It's still kind of true that Dutch spelling it's a bit harder for a German speaker to grasp than the other way around. So, in conclusion, which language is harder, so to say, like objectively harder? Personally, I would still say German. I know that sounds a bit biased because I speak Dutch as native language, so of course, I mean, learning any new language is already pretty hard under anyone's means. But still, German has way more to it. Whenever people say that German is the big brother of Dutch, in many ways that's actually very accurate. Obviously, German has far more native speakers. About 90 million people around the world speak German as their first language, whereas with Dutch it's about less than 30 million. But it's also true in terms of difficulty. German, it's similar to Dutch, but it is in many regards quite harder, especially in grammar, particularly in grammar. So even though the two languages are quite comparable, even though Dutch spelling, like I said, it's a bit harder than German, when it comes to grammar, German really knocks Dutch out of the park. But in another regard, the reason why it's probably easier for a Dutch speaker to get used to German than the other way around, well, it's just that German learners have more sources than Dutch learners because of the fact that German is much more spoken and in far more areas than there are areas where people speak Dutch. Dutch is only really primarily spoken in Flanders, the north of Belgium, and the Netherlands. Whereas with German, it's spoken, of course, all over Germany, and as you know, Germany is a pretty big country in Europe. And also just the fact that more than 95 people who live in the Netherlands can already speak very conversational English, whereas with German, only about 50% to 60% of Germans can actually speak conversational English. So in a way, there's just a bigger motivation to learn German because in German-speaking countries, percentage-wise, fewer people can speak English. Whereas if you learn Dutch to go to the Netherlands, you just feel less motivated because chances are, if you try to speak broken Dutch to a Dutch speaker, they will just respond in English. In Germany, that would also be the case, but a lot less. So yeah, that's the end of this video. I hope it kind of made sense. If you liked it, please leave a like, and thanks for watching. Bye!